So let's talk about self-publishing. Self-publishing is very different than vanity publishing, and it's also a different approach from traditional publishing, which I mentioned in the last video. I've been self-publishing since 2009, and in 2009 I was using the platform that was created by Amazon called CreateSpace. I was an early adopter there, and the first thing you need to know about the difference today between self-publishing, a vanity press, and traditional publishing is in most cases, self-publishing involves print-on-demand printing. Now, print-on-demand is using digital files to print your book as little as one copy at a time. And they keep that in their database, your files, and whenever you need books, they print them. And CreateSpace, which is now Kindle Direct Publishing, was one of the first platforms where you could do this. So people were like, how many books are you getting? And I said, I'm just getting one at a time. When someone orders a book, they make the book. And this is why, if you get caught up in a vanity publishing company, and they really do prey upon Christians, let me tell you. So there are a lot of these companies out there trying to get Christians to print books. And you just don't want to do that. You don't have to do that. There are other ways. I eventually did leave Kindle Direct Publishing. I still have a couple books on there, but I'm slowly moving all of my books off of Kindle Direct and into my own platform. And I'll tell you how I'm doing that, why I'm doing that. So first of all, Kindle Direct is okay to start, but after my third book, I discovered something. They had changed their policies. I started putting in the metadata for my book, and I closed the account, and I came back later that day, and they had put their free ISBN number on my book. And they had put a piece of code into that book metadata that indicated that this was a free, self-published book, a homebrew book, amateur book. And what that indicated in the database and in the searches and everything was this is a book not worth looking at. So I had to close that book, and I had to upload the book again. I think I had to change the title of the book to put on my ISBN number, and that's very important. Like I said before, if you get an ISBN number that isn't yours, then that book isn't yours, because it's the identification of the book. So my first book did really well on Kindle Direct. My second book did fairly okay. That third book, where they had gotten involved in the process, was a disaster. And I lost money on it. I barely sold 100 copies, and I had a really hard time getting traction. And there were changes in the algorithms on social media happening at the same time. So these two things together made it very difficult. And we'll talk about that when we get to marketing. I want to talk to you about why you cannot depend on social media for your marketing. So back to print on demand. That means you don't have to commit to a large printing. And if you have a reasonable audience, 800 to 1,000 people, you can get a book out there. You're not going to make a lot of money. This is one of the things that people don't understand about book publishing, is that even if you sell a lot of books, it's not enough to live on for most people. There are the people who do make their living selling books, but that's not the typical person. A person who does really well. I had 10 years where I had about $200 a month in royalties. That's not enough to live on, but it's a consistent income stream, with other things. So if you're doing other things, having a book is really good. So the first thing is that Kindle Direct Publishing and Ingram Spark, which is the company I use, both use the same print-on-demand company. And that company is called Lightning Source. And what they do is they get the files, they print the book. They give you sizes, they give you paper choices, they give you cover choices. You choose all that, and then they print the book for you. So the first thing you need to know is that if you're going to do self-publishing, you have to think of it very differently. You are responsible for what's happening. You have to have an entity to do it through. Either you have to do it as doing business on your as your own name, or you have to set up a business of some kind. That's the first thing you have to do. The second thing you have to do is you have to create the whole book from beginning to end. You have to be responsible. And this is the big difference. And here's why traditional publishing right now is not good, because they make you responsible for a lot of it. You have to be responsible for your marketing. You have to be responsible sometimes for your production costs. And that's no different than being a self-published author at that point. So you might as well take the responsibility upon yourself. So I'm really fortunate. I have a community of artists and creative people. And so there are many designers in our house. And I have a background in art and design. So the first thing you have to do is you have to prepare your manuscript. That means you have to edit the manuscript. You have to make sure it's correct. It really means you have to hire an editor. And when you hire an editor, it's gonna be really wonderful. If you can find an editor who you work with really well, they're gonna fix a lot of the problems. So you have to have an editor, you have to have a proofreader. I also have found it's very helpful to use some kind of platform to release the book incrementally to a small audience and get their feedback. And people will tell you what's working and what's not working. The two books that have done the best that I've published were both released that way. And it also helps in the marketing, because there's lots of things along the way, as you may be figuring out. When you build an audience, when you figure out your message, when you develop your voice, these are all aspects of marketing. You know, that's all part of the whole thing. It's all part of the stream. And you want to think about it this way all the time, that everything you do is part of forming what you're doing. We would say it's forming your brand. What is it that's you? Because you want to be unique in the whole process. So you prepare your manuscript, then you design the book. And that means using InDesign. It's really wise. You can download templates online, but it's really, really wise, especially with your first book, to have someone who understands typesetting. There's so many details in typesetting and preparing a book that if you aren't aware of them, it's going to make a difference between your book and somebody else's. And let me tell you, there's all these things now. Oh, just upload a Word document and make a book. That's not how you make a book. And people will be able to tell. People who know books will be able to tell immediately. If you're going to do something like that, that's a throwaway book. If you're doing something like that for your own personal enjoyment, that's great. But if you want a saleable product, you have to have someone who understands book design and typesetting. So important. And I can't stress that enough. So once you have your files prepared, and that means your interior files and your cover files, and what you'll have to do is, if you use Ingram Spark, when you do your cover, you have to download a template that you design your cover on, because one of the things you have to keep in mind is that the more pages you have, the thicker the spine. That's going to make a difference in your cover. So you want to do all that. You want to do it right. Do it right from the get-go. You'll be thankful later, because putting out a book is a niggly process. Then, actually at the front end of this, before you start designing the book, you really need your ISBN number. In the United States, you have to get your ISBN numbers through Bowker. And what I would recommend is, if you buy books, if you're going to write books, you might as well buy them in multiples. I usually buy 10 at a time, simply because you need a book. You'll need one for your ebook, you'll need one for your print book, and you'll need one sometimes for your audiobook. And it's really a good thing to have. So like I said, I buy 10 at a time. Then you prepare your metadata. because you're going to have all these things you're going to have to fill out when you put out a book. So that means you need a synopsis of the book, a little summary. What's the book about? Usually a long form and a short form. You're going to need, what they call the blurb. You have to write a blurb. Your bio, really important to have a good, short, succinct bio. You have to think about what genre and subcategory you're in. And especially on things like Amazon, you really want to think about the niche categories because that's going to affect your ranking on Amazon. So, think of the general category and then try to narrow it down as far as you can. What is this book about? My last book, Artists at a Shift in Time, for 3 weeks was at #1 in various categories on Amazon UK. And it stayed in the top 10 for that whole time, bouncing between #1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for about 3 weeks, which is great. That does several things. One, it gets you in the search engines. So when somebody searches for you, your book title will auto-fill sometimes. So that it's going to make people read your book. The second thing it's going to do is it's just going to set your book apart. It's not as generic, and that's really important. Then you have to upload your files. You upload your files, and once you've uploaded your files, you have to wait. And then they set up your book, and they're going to send you a proof. They're going to send you an e-proof. And it's really important to go through that e-proof very carefully, and also order a print book. And there's several reasons why you need to order a print book. First of all, things online never look like they do in print. Sometimes the type style's wrong, sometimes the type size is wrong. Sometimes the gutter, which is the center of the book, is going to be too close, and some of the words will go down into the gutter. You don't want that. Sometimes you discover mistakes. You've had all these eyes look at this manuscript. You've had all these people look at the design, and suddenly you're finding all kinds of mistakes. And you go through that book with a red pencil and you mark it. Then you take it back to your designer and you say, okay, these things all have to be fixed. You want to get all the mistakes out before you put that book on the market. And yet you have to be so careful. This last book, I was very careful, but even after the book got on the market, I found some things. So 3 weeks in, I went in and I removed things, I rewrote a couple things, I adjusted some things. And you can do that on Ingram Spark in the first 90 days, in the first 60 days. First 60 days, you can change your files for free. And that's really important. You need to just get your quality up as high as you can. Then you get that proof, you review it, and finally, you release the book. And it's really important that all through this time, now this is part of marketing, the whole time that you're doing all of this, you tell your friends. If you are on social media, then you say, hey, I'm working on this book. You mention it wherever you can, and it's going to be annoying. It's going to be hard for you, but it has to be a natural process so that there is some anticipation for that book. And once that book gets on the market, then you can do some things to launch it. You can have a party. You can do a book signing in a public place. I used to do book signings in a big art supply store in Boston. You can do some promotional deals. I released my book for 30% off to people for a month. You can do things because you want to get that book out there and you want people to review it online. And just like the metadata, reviewing things online is going to affect that book on the internet. It's going to affect search engines. It's going to affect it's going to give the book credibility, especially on Amazon. If you get a bunch of 5-star reviews right in the beginning, that's going to really help that book. And all of these things are about getting that book out there on the market. Now, I'm going to talk about marketing at the end of this, but in the next video, I want to talk about two things. The two things that you have to keep in mind when you put your work out there are rejection and plagiarism. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about rejection and plagiarism.